Sup you beautiful people, hope you've had a fantastic day. Welcome back to another new episode of What If Naruto Was Neglected by All His Peers. He was meant to be the Hokage, the beacon of hope. But what if Naruto's earliest days were marked not by camaraderie, but by crushing isolation? This isn't just a story about a different Naruto. It's about a Konoha that broke its own hero, and the profound, dark implications that ripple through a shinobi world without its guiding light. If you guys enjoy this What If, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other What Ifs in the channel after watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So now let's start this video. The road to the land of waves stretched through dense forest that grew increasingly humid as Team 7 approached the coastline. What had begun as a routine escort mission was revealing layers of complexity that Naruto had anticipated, but his teammates remained oblivious to. Tazuna's nervous glances at every shadow, his flinching at unexpected sounds, and most tellingly, his persistent questions about their combat experience painted a picture of a man expecting far more trouble than a simple C-rank mission should entail. From his position at the rear of their traveling formation, Naruto observed these warning signs while maintaining his facade of cheerful ignorance. Kakashi walked point with his customary casual alertness, orange book in hand despite his roving attention to their surroundings. Sasuke and Sakura flanked their client, their academy-fresh vigilance focused on obvious threats rather than subtle inconsistencies in their mission parameters. Classic deception pattern, Naruto noted as he watched Tazuna stumble slightly over a route that wasn't there, his body betraying anticipation of attacks from concealed enemies. He's expecting specific opposition, which means this mission was misrepresented from the beginning. "So, Tazuna-san," Sakura said, her voice bright with the enthusiasm of a genin on her first real assignment, "what's the bridge construction project like? It must be exciting to build something that will help your whole country." The old man's response was carefully neutral, but Naruto caught the micro-expressions that revealed deeper truths. Fear when she mentioned the project's significance. Guilt when she spoke of helping the country. And underneath it all, a desperate hope that somehow these young shinobi would prove capable enough to handle whatever was coming. He's not just worried about random bandits, Naruto analyzed while pretending to be fascinated by the local flora. This is personal. Someone specifically wants him dead, and he knows it. The first confirmation of his assessment came 3 hours into their journey, when Kakashi's hand moved almost imperceptibly toward his weapon pouch. The Jonin's enhanced senses had detected what was still hidden from his students, the presence of hostile chakra signatures positioned for ambush along their route. Finally, Naruto thought as he observed Kakashi's subtle preparation. "Let's see how my teammates handle their first real combat situation." The attack, when it came, was swift and professional. Two figures emerged from concealment on either side of the road, their movements synchronized with the precision of experienced team fighters. Both wore the forehead protectors of Kirigakure, the hidden mist village, though Naruto's enhanced perception immediately identified the protectors as authentic rather than stolen from defeated enemies. Actual missing nin, he noted with interest as the attackers launched their assault. B-rank threat minimum, possibly A-rank depending on their specializations. The Demon Brothers, for that was how they would later be identified, moved with lethal intent that far exceeded the capabilities Team 7 had been prepared to face. Their signature weapon, a massive chain with sharpened weights on either end, whirled through the air with devastating efficiency as they attempted to decapitate Kakashi in a single coordinated strike. What followed was a brief but intense engagement that showcased the vast gulf between academy training and real combat experience. Kakashi substituted away from the initial attack, his replacement log exploding into splinters as the chain weapon completed its deadly arc. Sasuke and Sakura scattered according to their training, seeking cover while trying to maintain visual contact with their client. And Naruto appeared to freeze in terror, standing motionless in the middle of the road like a deer caught in headlights. Perfect performance of shock paralysis, he thought while actually conducting detailed threat assessment of both attackers. Reinforces perceptions of combat inexperience while allowing optimal observation position. The Demon Brothers regrouped quickly, their attention shifting from the escaped Jonin to the scattered genin who represented easier targets. One moved toward Sasuke's position with predatory confidence, while the other advanced on Sakura and Tazuna's hiding spot behind a fallen log. "Naruto, move!" Kakashi shouted from his new position, genuine concern coloring his voice as he prepared to intervene. But Naruto didn't move. couldn't move from all external appearances, as shock and terror rendered him as helpless as any untrained civilian caught in their first life-or-death situation. Interesting choice point, he observed with clinical detachment as events unfolded around him. Intervene and risk exposure, or maintain cover and allow natural consequences to develop. The mathematics were complex but ultimately clear. His teammates needed to learn the realities of shinobi life without his invisible support cushioning every challenge. More importantly, revealing combat capabilities during this engagement would raise questions about his true skill level that could compromise everything he had worked to build. Sometimes the best lesson is the harsh one, he decided, as Sasuke engaged the first demon brother with impressive taijutsu skills that nonetheless weren't quite sufficient for victory against an experienced killer. What followed was a revelation of just how much difference his hidden interventions had made during their previous encounters. Without Naruto's subtle assistance, Sasuke's natural talents were impressive but insufficient. The Uchiha heir fought with skill and determination, but lacked the experience to read his opponent's intentions or anticipate the tactical variations that separated academy sparring from lethal combat. Sakura's contribution was limited to protecting Tazuna, while Kakashi dealt with the second attacker. Her theoretical knowledge was extensive, but practical application under pressure revealed the gaps between classroom learning and field experience. She could identify the techniques being used and understand their counters in abstract terms, but couldn't execute those counters effectively while managing the adrenaline and fear of actual combat. Educational for everyone involved, Naruto noted as he maintained his paralyzed stance while cataloging every technique and tactical decision for later analysis. The turning point came when Sasuke, pressed beyond his limits by his opponent's superior experience, made a critical error in positioning that left him exposed to a counterattack he couldn't avoid or defend against. The demon brother's weapon swept toward his throat with lethal precision, the sharpened chain moving too fast for academy-level reflexes to evade. In the original timeline, the one that existed in Naruto's memories of stories told and retold throughout his lonely childhood, this would have been the moment when desperation unlocked hidden reserves of strength and speed. The moment when teamwork and determination overcame superior skill through sheer force of will. But that timeline had depended on interventions that weren't happening, inspiration that wasn't coming, support that remained invisible because its provider had chosen observation over participation. Fascinating, Naruto thought as he watched Sasuke's eyes widen in the final moment of recognition, understanding too late that his dodge wasn't going to be fast enough. So this is what happens when people face consequences without invisible assistance. The chain struck home with sickening precision. Sasuke Uchiha, last heir of the Uchiha clan, Rookie of the Year, future avenger of his family's massacre, collapsed to the road with blood pooling beneath him. His eyes remained open, staring at nothing, while his body ceased the struggle that had defined his entire existence since that night 6 years ago when his brother had destroyed everything he thought he understood about the world. Target eliminated, the demon brother reported with professional satisfaction. 1 down, 3 to go. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the distant sound of Kakashi finishing his own opponent with lethal efficiency. Sakura's scream, when it finally came, was raw and primal, the sound of innocence dying alongside her teammate. "Sasuke-kun," she shrieked, abandoning her protective position around Tazuna to rush toward the fallen Uchiha. "No, no, no, this can't be happening." Predictable trauma response, Naruto observed while maintaining his facade of shocked paralysis. Denial, followed by desperate attempts to reverse irreversible outcomes. Kakashi appeared beside Sasuke's body with the speed that only desperation could fuel, his hands immediately beginning diagnostic techniques that confirmed what was already obvious to anyone with medical training. The chain had severed major arteries and caused massive internal trauma that was beyond any field treatment capabilities. "He's gone," Kakashi said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of professional assessment and personal failure. "I'm sorry, Sakura, there's nothing we can do." The pink-haired girl's response was to ignore reality entirely, her hands pressing against Sasuke's wounds while chakra flared erratically around her fingers. Her medical knowledge was theoretical rather than practical, but desperation drove her to attempt techniques she had only read about in textbooks. "I can save him," she insisted, tears streaming down her face as her chakra fluctuated wildly. "I just need to stop the bleeding, and then we can get him to a hospital. And, Sakura," Kakashi's voice was gentle but firm, He's dead. Continuing this will only cause you unnecessary pain. Textbook grief progression, Naruto noted as he finally allowed himself to move from his paralyzed position, stumbling forward with convincing shock and disbelief. She'll cycle through denial, anger, bargaining, and depression before reaching acceptance. "This is my fault," he said aloud, his voice breaking with what appeared to be guilt and self-recrimination. "I froze up. I should have helped him, should have done something, but I was too scared to move." Perfect performance of survivor's guilt, he analyzed while Kakashi's attention briefly focused on him with something approaching sympathy. "This isn't your fault, Naruto," the Jonin said, though his tone suggested he was trying to convince himself as much as his remaining student. These were experienced missing nin. Even Chunin would have struggled against opponents of this caliber. Interesting rationalization, Naruto thought as he observed Kakashi's own guilt responses. He's already reframing the engagement to minimize his sense of responsibility for the outcome. The aftermath of Sasuke's death revealed layers of complexity that extended far beyond the immediate tactical situation. Tazuna's reaction was telling, genuine shock at the violence, but also visible concern about how this development might affect his mission objectives. The bridge builder needed protection to complete his project, and losing 1/3 of his escort detail represented a significant strategic problem. "We should return to Konoha," Sakura said through her tears, her voice hollow with grief. "We need to report what happened and arrange for Sasuke-kun's funeral." Logical but impractical, Naruto noted as he watched Kakashi consider their options. Returning now would mean mission failure, which carries its own political and economic consequences. "I understand your grief," Tazuna interjected carefully, "but my village is depending on this bridge. Without it, we'll starve. The people who killed your friend will send more assassins if I don't reach the construction site." His words sparked something in Sakura that transcended mourning, pure, incandescent rage directed at the man she held responsible for Sasuke's death. "Your bridge," she snarled, her chakra flaring with dangerous instability. "Sasuke-kun died because you lied to us. You knew this was more than a C-rank mission, and you let us walk into a trap." Anger phase initiated, Naruto observed while preparing to intervene if Sakura's emotional state led to violence against their client. Her attachment to Sasuke is redirecting grief into fury toward available targets. The confrontation revealed the fundamental deception that had underlain their mission from the beginning. Tazuna's project wasn't just bridge construction. It was an act of rebellion against Gato, a shipping magnate who controlled the Land of Waves economy through a combination of monopolistic practices and hired violence. The bridge would break Gato's stranglehold on the island nation's trade routes, which made its construction a direct threat to his financial empire. "I couldn't afford a higher-ranked mission," Tazuna explained, his voice carrying desperation and shame. "Gato has bankrupted our country. We had barely enough money for a C-rank escort, and without the bridge, my people will die slowly instead of quickly." Classic moral complexity, Naruto noted as he watched the team process this information. Economic warfare creating situations where deception becomes necessary for survival. Kakashi's decision to continue the mission despite their losses was influenced by multiple factors beyond simple duty. Professional pride demanded that he not return to Konoha with a dead student and a failed mission. Strategic assessment suggested that abandoning Tazuna now would only result in more violence as Gato's forces pursued the bridge builder to ensure his permanent silence. And underneath both rational considerations was the guilt-driven need to ensure that Sasuke's death had not been completely meaningless. Sunk cost fallacy combined with emotional investment, Naruto analyzed while nodding along with the group consensus. Continuing the mission provides psychological comfort that the sacrifice had purpose. The journey to the Land of Waves continued under significantly altered circumstances. Sakura moved through the stages of grief with textbook progression, her initial rage giving way to periods of hollow depression interrupted by desperate bargaining attempts, where she proposed increasingly unrealistic scenarios for reversing recent events. Kakashi maintained professional functionality while clearly struggling with command decisions that had resulted in a subordinate's death. His guilt manifested in hypervigilance and overprotective behavior toward his surviving team members, creating tactical complications as his emotional state interfered with optimal strategic thinking. And Naruto continued to play his role of traumatized academy graduate while conducting comprehensive analysis of how Sasuke's death would affect not just their immediate mission, but the larger political and social dynamics throughout the shinobi world. Ripple effects, he thought, as they approached the coastline where boats would transport them to Wave Country proper. Itachi's sacrifice rendered meaningless, Uchiha bloodline officially extinct, Konoha's political balance altered by the loss of a major clan heir. The boat ride to the main island provided opportunity for reflection and planning, though his teammates seemed incapable of focusing on anything beyond their immediate grief and trauma. Naruto used the time to consider how Sasuke's death would alter the trajectory of future events, calculating new probability matrices for conflicts and challenges that might now unfold differently. Orochimaru will need a new host for his immortality technique, he noted while staring out at the waves. The Sand Village's invasion plans may change without the promise of Uchiha Sharingan as a strategic asset. The Akatsuki's timetable could be accelerated or delayed depending on how they adapt to altered circumstances. But those were considerations for the future. The immediate challenge remained completing their mission in the Land of Waves, protecting Tazuna long enough for him to finish his bridge, and ensuring that Sasuke's death hadn't been entirely without purpose. One teammate dead, one traumatized, one instructor consumed by guilt, Naruto summarized as their boat approached the dock. And somehow, I'm still the one nobody notices. As they disembarked in the Land of Waves, Naruto reflected on the morning's events with clinical detachment. He had chosen observation over intervention, allowing natural consequences to unfold rather than providing the invisible support that might have changed the outcome. It was a calculated decision based on long-term strategic considerations rather than emotional attachments. But as they walked through the impoverished streets of Wave Country, past hungry children and desperate families whose futures depended on a bridge that might never be completed, Naruto began to understand the true weight of choices made in the shadows. Sometimes, he thought as Sakura's quiet sobbing continued behind him, the cost of being invisible is higher than anyone realizes. The mission continued, but Team 7 would never be the same. In trying to protect his secrets, Naruto had allowed something far more valuable to be lost, and the ripples of that choice would spread far beyond the borders of this small island nation. The bridge to nowhere had claimed its first casualty, but it would not be the last. The journey back to Konoha stretched across 3 days of funeral silence, broken only by the rhythmic sound of feet against packed earth and Sakura's occasional, involuntary sobs. Team 7, what remained of it, moved through the landscape like ghosts haunting their own story, each member processing the weight of failure in their own way. Tazuna had completed his bridge, though the victory felt hollow in the shadow of Sasuke's death. The structure stood as a monument to the price of freedom, its spans reaching across water that had been stained with the blood of Konoha's future. The bridge builder had tried to express his gratitude, but words seemed inadequate when measured against the life that had been lost to secure his people's salvation. From his position at the rear of their somber procession, Naruto observed his teammates with the same clinical detachment he had maintained throughout the mission. Kakashi walked with the careful precision of someone carrying an invisible burden, his visible eye constantly scanning their surroundings for threats that might claim another student. The copy ninja's guilt had crystallized into hypervigilance, creating tactical complications as his emotional state interfered with rational assessment of their security situation. Sakura moved like a sleepwalker, her grief having progressed beyond tears into the hollow numbness that preceded either healing or complete breakdown. Her academic knowledge of trauma psychology was extensive, but intellectual understanding provided no protection against the raw reality of losing someone she had built her entire identity around. Without Sasuke as her focal point, she seemed to be questioning not just her purpose as a kunoichi, but her fundamental sense of self. Fascinating case study in attachment disorder, Naruto noted while maintaining his facade of subdued anxiety. Her entire personality structure was organized around external validation from someone who never acknowledged her existence. Now she's facing the psychological equivalent of total systemic collapse. For Naruto himself, the return journey provided invaluable opportunities for reflection and strategic planning. Sasuke's death represented a fundamental alteration to the timeline he had been operating within, creating ripple effects that would cascade through every future event he had anticipated. The Uchiha bloodline was now extinct, Itachi's sacrifice rendered meaningless, and Orochimaru's plans for immortality would require complete restructuring. Butterfly effect in action, he thought as they approached the gates of Konoha. One choice to maintain cover rather than intervene, and the entire shinobi world shifts onto a darker trajectory. The village walls rose before them with their familiar mixture of strength and welcome, but Naruto felt none of the homecoming relief that typically accompanied a mission's end. Instead, he found himself calculating how Konoha would process the loss of its most promising young shinobi, what political ramifications would emerge from the Uchiha clan's final extinction, and most importantly, how completely his own survival would be overlooked in the aftermath of more significant events. The gate guards who processed their return demonstrated exactly the pattern Naruto had expected. Their attention focused immediately on Kakashi, whose obvious distress and the absence of the team's third member told a story that required no verbal explanation. Expressions of sympathy and concern followed, along with quiet questions about what had happened and whether additional support was needed. Sakura received gentle consideration as well, her tear-stained face and hollow expression earning worried glances and offers of medical attention or counseling services. The guards recognized trauma when they saw it, and their professional concern for a fellow shinobi's well-being was genuine and immediate. And Naruto, well, Naruto might as well have been invisible. Predictable, he observed as the guards completed their security protocols without once making eye contact with him or acknowledging his presence. Even returning from a mission where a teammate died, I remain beneath notice. The report to the Hokage's office followed a similar pattern. Hiruzen Sarutobi received them with the grave concern appropriate for such circumstances, his weathered face reflecting both personal grief and professional assessment of the political implications. The third Hokage's questions focused primarily on the tactical circumstances of Sasuke's death, the level of threat they had faced, and whether proper procedures had been followed given the mission's unexpected escalation. The demon brothers were B-rank missing nin minimum, Kakashi reported, his voice carefully controlled despite the emotion underlying his words. Their capabilities exceeded our mission parameters by a significant margin. Sasuke fought with skill and courage, but he was outmatched by opponents with vastly superior experience. Accurate but incomplete, Naruto noted while maintaining his position against the back wall of the office. No mention of the client's deception, the mission's actual difficulty level, or the tactical decisions that led to the engagement occurring under unfavorable circumstances. Hiruzen's attention shifted briefly to Sakura, whose trauma was evident in every aspect of her demeanor. "And you, Sakura-chan, do you require medical attention or counseling support?" "I'm fine, Hokage-sama," she replied automatically, though her hollow tone suggested anything but wellness. I need time to process what happened." Classic denial response, Naruto analyzed as he watched the interaction unfold. She's rejecting help because accepting it would require acknowledging the permanence of her loss. The debriefing continued for nearly an hour, covering every aspect of the mission from initial parameters through final resolution. Kakashi's account was thorough and professional, though Naruto detected subtle omissions that protected both his students and himself from certain uncomfortable questions about judgment and preparation. Throughout the entire process, not a single question was directed toward the third member of Team 7. Remarkable consistency, Naruto thought as he observed his complete exclusion from official proceedings. Even when discussing events I directly witnessed and participated in, my perspective is considered irrelevant. The dismissal from the Hokage's office marked the beginning of what would become the most revealing period in Naruto's understanding of his true place in the village hierarchy. As news of Sasuke's death spread throughout Konoha, the community's response demonstrated with mathematical precision exactly how much, or how little, different individuals mattered to the collective consciousness. The reaction was immediate and profound. Sasuke Uchiha had been more than just a promising young shinobi. He had been a symbol of resilience, the living embodiment of Konoha's ability to survive and overcome even the most devastating tragedies. His death represented not just the loss of potential, but the final extinction of one of the village's founding clans. Within hours of the official announcement, memorial flowers began appearing at the Uchiha compound's entrance. Citizens who had never spoken to Sasuke personally brought offerings and condolences, their grief genuine despite the lack of personal connection. Academy students gathered in hushed groups to discuss their fallen classmate, their conversations mixing sorrow with relief that they had not been the ones chosen for such a dangerous mission. Fascinating sociological phenomenon, Naruto observed as he moved through the village like a ghost among mourners. Collective grief for someone most people knew only as a symbol rather than a person. The memorial service held 3 days after their return drew hundreds of attendees. filling the academy's main auditorium to capacity with overflow crowds extending into the courtyard. Speaker after speaker rose to praise Sasuke's dedication, his skill, his determination to honor his family's legacy through service to the village. Academy instructors shared stories of his exceptional performance, fellow students recounted moments of inspiration drawn from his example, and village leaders spoke of the bright future that had been cut tragically short. Naruto attended the service, naturally. He sat in the back row, unnoticed and unremarked, listening to testimonial after testimonial about the teammate whose death he could have prevented with a single moment of intervention. Guilt he noted with clinical interest as he examined his own emotional responses. Fascinating that I can feel responsibility for an outcome I deliberately allowed to occur. But more illuminating than the memorial service itself was what happened afterward, as the crowd dispersed and life began the process of returning to normal. Conversations in the streets revealed the deeper implications of Sasuke's death for Konoha's political and strategic future. Without an Uchiha heir, the clan's compound would remain empty, its techniques lost, its political influence permanently eliminated from the village's power structure. Strategic simplification, Naruto realized as he eavesdropped on discussions between Chunin and Jonin. Sasuke's death removes a complex variable from Konoha's internal politics, even as it creates new vulnerabilities in external relations. The most revealing conversations took place in the administrative buildings, where mission assignments and team restructuring had to account for the permanent reduction in available personnel. Naruto discovered that Team 7's future was already being discussed in practical terms. Whether to disband the unit entirely, reassign the surviving members to different squads, or attempt to recruit a replacement for their lost member. The girl has potential, one administrator noted during a discussion Naruto observed from the building's ventilation system, but she'll need significant psychological support to overcome her trauma. Hokage's request for extended leave suggests he's not ready to resume active instruction either. What about the third member? Asked another voice. Uzumaki, wasn't it? There was a long pause, the kind of silence that suggested someone trying to remember details about a person they had never really noticed. Transfer him to another team, the first administrator finally said. He's not particularly notable. Any squad could absorb him without difficulty. There it is, Naruto thought with dark amusement. Official confirmation that my existence registers as barely more significant than furniture. But perhaps the most illuminating revelation came from an unexpected source. 3 weeks after their return, as Naruto conducted his nightly reconnaissance of the village's activity patterns, he detected an unusual chakra signature near the memorial stone. Investigation revealed Itachi Uchiha standing before the monument in the pre-dawn darkness, his silhouette motionless against the carved names of fallen heroes. Interesting, Naruto noted as he observed from concealment. He's returned to confirm his brother's death personally. The missing nin's presence in the village should have triggered massive security responses, but Itachi's infiltration capabilities remained as flawless as ever. He stood vigil for exactly 13 minutes, long enough to process the reality of his brother's death, not long enough to risk detection by Anbu patrols. When he finally moved, it was with the fluid precision that had made him legend among Konoha's enemies. But as he prepared to depart, Itachi paused, his gaze sweeping across the village he had sacrificed everything to protect. For one impossible moment, his eyes met Naruto's across the distance, separating their positions. He sees me, Naruto realized with shock that pierced through his usual analytical detachment. Somehow, he's immune to whatever technique creates my invisibility. Itachi's expression revealed nothing, but he made no move to attack or investigate. Instead, he simply nodded once, a gesture that could have meant anything from acknowledgement to dismissal, before disappearing into the shadows as silently as he had arrived. Curious, Naruto thought as he processed this unexpected interaction. What does it mean that a missing nin can perceive me clearly when my own village cannot? The question would require further investigation, but its implications were staggering. If certain individuals could overcome whatever effect created his invisibility, then his condition might be less absolute than he had assumed. The possibility opened new avenues for understanding his circumstances, while simultaneously creating new vulnerabilities he had not previously considered. As spring turned toward summer and Konoha gradually adjusted to its altered circumstances, Naruto found himself reaching conclusions that would fundamentally reshape his approach to the world around him. The The months following Sasuke's death had provided irrefutable evidence of something he had suspected but never fully accepted. His presence or absence truly changed nothing for anyone around him. Team 7 was officially disbanded, its surviving members reassigned to different units. Sakura joined a medical training program under Tsunade's eventual supervision, her trauma channeled into a determination to prevent future losses through healing rather than combat. Kakashi received extended leave to process his own guilt and failures, though rumors suggested he would eventually return to Anbu rather than resume teaching duties. And Naruto was assigned to Team 11, a newly formed unit consisting of academy graduates who had shown promise but lacked the political connections or standout capabilities that warranted placement with prestigious instructors. Their sensei was a competent but unremarkable Chunin named Ebisu, whose teaching methods emphasized discipline and fundamentals over innovation or inspiration. Lateral transfer to maintain bureaucratic efficiency, Naruto observed during his first meeting with his new teammates. I've been reclassified as generic resource rather than individual with specific capabilities or needs. The new team dynamic was instructive in its own way. His teammates, Konohamaru, Mogi, and Udon, were enthusiastic but conventional, approaching their training with the kind of earnest determination that suggested they understood the importance of their duties without possessing the exceptional gifts that might elevate them beyond mediocrity. Ebisu's assessment of Naruto was perfunctory and dismissive. "I've reviewed your academy records and mission reports," the instructor announced during their introductory meeting. "Your performance has been adequate. I expect you'll benefit from the structure and discipline this team provides." Translation: he expects nothing exceptional and will receive exactly what he anticipates, Naruto noted while nodding along with appropriate humility. But the most significant revelation came not from his new assignments or teammates, but from a gradual understanding of how completely his previous contributions had been erased from official memory. The mission reports from the Land of Waves mentioned him only in passing, and even those references were perfunctory acknowledgments of his presence rather than assessments of his actions or capabilities. Fascinating, he thought as he reviewed the documents he had obtained through careful infiltration of the mission archives. Not only do people fail to notice my contributions in real time, but their memories of events are retroactively altered to minimize or eliminate my involvement entirely. The psychological implications were staggering. If his invisibility extended beyond perception into memory, then he was dealing with something far more complex than simple social dismissal. Whatever technique or phenomenon was responsible for his condition operated at levels that affected fundamental cognitive processes, creating gaps in awareness that persisted even after direct interaction. Time for a new approach, he decided as summer deepened, and his understanding of his circumstances reached a critical threshold. If I'm truly invisible to this degree, then I need to start leveraging that invisibility as a strategic advantage rather than treating it as a limitation to overcome. The realization marked a fundamental shift in Naruto's psychological development. For years, he had maintained hope that eventually someone would notice his true capabilities, that his careful cultivation of competence would eventually break through the barriers that separated him from genuine recognition. But Sasuke's death and its aftermath had proven definitively that no amount of heroism or sacrifice would change how the world perceived him. "I am nobody to them," he acknowledged with crystalline clarity as he stood on the academy roof where this phase of his journey had begun. "And if I'm nobody, then I'm free to become anybody." The sunset painted Konoha in shades of gold and crimson, its beauty unmarred by the darkness that had entered Naruto's understanding of his place in the world. Below him, the village continued its eternal rhythms. People working, training, loving, dreaming, completely unaware that one of their number had just crossed a psychological threshold that would reshape everything to come. "Part I complete," he thought with quiet satisfaction. Time to discover what a genius can accomplish when the world forgets he exists. The foundation of shadows was ending, but the real story was just beginning. In choosing invisibility over intervention, in accepting nobody status over heroic recognition, Naruto had unlocked possibilities that the noticed and celebrated could never access. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, and new tests of just how much one invisible boy could change the world by working from its shadows. The academy had taught him the basics of being a shinobi, but life had taught him something far more valuable: how to be a ghost in the machine, how to shape events without claiming credit, and how to become the most dangerous person in any room simply by ensuring that no one remembered he was there. The art of being nobody was about to evolve into something far more sophisticated, and the world would never see it coming. 6 months had passed since the disbanding of the original Team 7, and the rhythm of Naruto's new existence had settled into patterns that would have seemed impossible during his academy days. Team 11 operated with the mechanical efficiency of a well-oiled machine, their missions completed with competent professionalism that earned steady praise from their clients and superiors. Ebisu's leadership style emphasized discipline and incremental improvement, creating an environment where steady progress was valued over spectacular achievement. For his teammates Konoha, Mogi, and Udon, this structured approach represented exactly what they needed to develop their potential as shinobi. Under Ebisu's guidance, they had grown from enthusiastic but unfocused academy graduates into capable genin who could handle C-rank missions with confidence and skill. For Naruto, the experience had been illuminating in entirely different ways. Fascinating how completely unremarkable competence can become when properly calibrated, he reflected as Team 11 completed their morning training exercises in Training Ground 7. 6 months of careful performance management, and I've achieved perfect mediocrity. His teammates gathered around Ebisu to receive feedback on their taijutsu drills, their faces bright with the satisfaction of students who had clearly improved under their instructor's tutelage. Konohamaru's strikes were faster and more precise than they had been at the beginning of their partnership. Mogi's defensive positioning showed significant tactical development. Udon's chakra control had evolved from barely adequate to genuinely competent. "Excellent work today, everyone," Ebisu announced, adjusting his sunglasses with characteristic formality. "Your progress continues to meet my expectations. We'll conclude this morning's session with meditation exercises, then proceed to mission assignment." Standard routine, Naruto noted as he followed his teammates to their designated meditation positions. Ebisu's teaching methodology prioritizes consistency over innovation, which has been ideal for maintaining my invisibility while continuing to develop actual capabilities. The meditation period provided opportunities for reflection that had become invaluable to Naruto's strategic planning. While his teammates focused on chakra circulation and mental discipline, he used the time to process intelligence gathered during his nocturnal activities and plan responses to emerging developments throughout the shinobi world. The most significant of these developments had arrived 3 days earlier in the form of an official announcement that would reshape the immediate future for every genin team in Konoha. The Chunin selection exams would be held in the village for the first time in over 5 years. Interesting timing, Naruto had observed while reviewing the announcement's political implications. Coming so soon after Sasuke's death and the political instability it created. Someone is making a statement about Konoha's continued strength despite recent losses. The exams represented far more than simple promotion opportunities for ambitious genin. They were carefully orchestrated demonstrations of military capability, designed to showcase each participating village's strength while providing neutral ground for intelligence gathering and diplomatic maneuvering. The fact that Konoha had volunteered to host suggested confidence in their ability to project power despite recent setbacks. What made the announcement particularly significant for Naruto was the carefully worded invitation extended to all qualified genin teams within the village. Unlike previous exams that had been limited to established squads with specific performance records, this year's requirements had been deliberately broadened to include units that might not typically be considered ready for Chunin-level evaluation. Fascinating bureaucratic language, he had noted while analyzing the official documentation. They're essentially drafting every available team to maximize participation numbers. Quantity over quality to create the impression of robust military strength. Uzumaki, Ebisu's voice cut through his meditative analysis, drawing Naruto's attention back to the immediate training environment. "Your focus seems scattered today. Is there something specific troubling you?" The question was delivered with Ebisu's characteristic blend of professional concern and mild disapproval. Their instructor took meditation seriously as both training exercise and personal development tool, and any apparent lack of commitment to the practice warranted correction. "Sorry, Ebisu-sensei," Naruto replied with appropriate contrition. "I was thinking about the Chunin exams announcement. Do you think our team will be participating?" Perfect deflection, he noted as Ebisu's expression shifted from disapproval to thoughtful consideration. redirecting criticism toward legitimate strategic concerns while maintaining facade of student-appropriate anxiety. That decision will be made by the village leadership based on careful assessment of each team's readiness, Ebisu responded formally. Our focus should remain on continuous improvement rather than premature concern about advancement opportunities. Translation: he hasn't been told whether we're participating, but suspects we will be based on the broadened eligibility criteria, Naruto analyzed while nodding along with dutiful acceptance. The truth was that Team 11's participation had been essentially guaranteed from the moment the announcement was made. Konoha needed bodies to fill exam slots, and every functional Genin team would be pressed into service regardless of their actual readiness for Chunin-level responsibilities. It was a calculated gamble, sacrifice individual teams' optimal preparation in favor of presenting maximum force strength to visiting villages and their intelligence operatives. Political theater requiring expendable actors, Naruto concluded as the meditation session concluded and Team 11 prepared for their daily mission assignment. The question isn't whether we'll participate, but how effectively I can use the exams to advance my own objectives without compromising my invisibility. The mission briefing that followed their training provided additional confirmation of the village's preparation efforts. Instead of their usual C-rank assignment involving escort duties or minor security work, Team 11 was assigned to assist with infrastructure modifications at the academy, specifically preparing examination venues and security installations for the upcoming event. This represents an excellent opportunity to observe high-level preparation procedures, Ebisu explained as they made their way toward the academy complex. Pay close attention to the organizational methods and security protocols being implemented. Such knowledge will prove valuable as you advance in your careers. Indeed it will, Naruto thought as he cataloged every detail of the academy's transformation for the exams, though probably not in the ways Ebisu anticipates. The work itself was routine, moving furniture, installing additional lighting, reinforcing structural elements that would need to withstand potential combat damage during preliminary rounds. But the intelligence value was extraordinary. Naruto's position as unnoticed team member allowed him to observe security briefings, overhear strategic discussions, and map defensive preparations that would normally be classified far above Genin clearance levels. Fascinating tactical overview, he noted while helping to install surveillance equipment in classroom 3B. They're treating this as potential combat zone rather than academic environment. Someone expects significant violence during the examination process. The most illuminating discovery came during their lunch break, when Naruto positioned himself to eavesdrop on a conversation between two Chunin supervisors discussing participant rosters and threat assessments. "The Sound Village delegation concerns me," one was saying, his voice carefully modulated to avoid attracting attention. "Brand new hidden village, no established diplomatic relations, and they're sending Genin teams to our exams. Something doesn't feel right about that situation." "Orders came directly from the Hokage's office," his companion replied. "Apparently, there are larger political considerations at play. We're supposed to treat them as legitimate participants while maintaining enhanced surveillance protocols." Sound Village, Naruto repeated mentally, cross-referencing the name against intelligence he had gathered through other sources. Orochimaru's latest creation, which means the Sannin will be present during the exams, probably with objectives that extend far beyond simple participation. The implications were staggering. If Orochimaru was planning to use the Chunin exams as cover for some larger operation, then every participant would be walking into a situation far more dangerous than they realized. More importantly for Naruto's purposes, it meant the exams would provide unprecedented opportunities to observe high-level techniques and strategic thinking from some of the most dangerous individuals in the shinobi world. Perfect learning environment, he concluded as Team 11 resumed their preparation duties. Provided I can navigate the associated risks without exposing my true capabilities. The afternoon brought an unexpected development when Ebisu was summoned to an emergency instructor meeting, leaving Team 11 to complete their assigned tasks under minimal supervision. For most Genin teams, this would have been an opportunity for relaxed conversation and casual work pace. For Naruto, it represented a chance to conduct more detailed reconnaissance without the constraints of maintaining perfect student behavior. "I need to use the bathroom," he announced to his teammates, who barely acknowledged his departure as they continued organizing examination materials. Standard cover for intelligence gathering, he noted as he slipped away from the main work area and began systematic exploration of the Academy's modified layout. What he discovered during the next 30 minutes would have alarmed any rational person familiar with the standard scope of Chunin examinations. The Academy had been transformed into something approaching a military fortress, with defensive installations and security measures that suggested preparation for siege-level threats rather than academic evaluation. Hidden weapon caches in supply closets, reinforced walls with emergency escape routes, communication arrays that could coordinate with ANBU rapid response teams, medical facilities equipped for mass casualty treatment. Everything pointed toward an organization that expected the exams to become a battlefield rather than a demonstration of student capabilities. They know something is coming, Naruto realized as he cataloged defensive preparations that exceeded anything typically deployed for civilian protection. The question is whether they know specifically what Orochimaru is planning, or if they're simply preparing for general treachery from unknown sources. His investigation was interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps, multiple individuals moving with the disciplined precision that characterized Chunin-level shinobi. Naruto immediately activated concealment techniques he had perfected through months of covert observation, pressing himself into shadows that would render him effectively invisible to casual inspection. The group that passed consisted of 4 ANBU operatives conducting their own security assessment of the modified academy. Their conversation, conducted in the abbreviated phrases and coded references that characterized elite units, revealed fragments of information that painted an even more concerning picture of the situation. Primary target confirmed for participation, one was reporting. Intelligence suggests level 7 threat assessment may be conservative. Containment protocols remain insufficient for worst-case scenarios, another responded. Recommend evacuation procedures for civilian populations within 3-kilometer radius. Level 7 threat assessment, Naruto repeated mentally, consulting his knowledge of ANBU classification systems. That places whatever they're expecting in the same category as Biju-level threats or S-rank missing nin with village destruction capabilities. The ANBU team continued their inspection, their professional demeanor not quite concealing underlying tension that suggested genuine concern about the approaching exams. When they finally departed, Naruto waited several minutes before emerging from concealment and returning to his teammates with a carefully neutral expression. "Everything okay?" Konohamaru asked as Naruto resumed his assigned tasks. "You were gone for a while, just got a bit lost in the new layout," Naruto replied with convincing embarrassment. "Some of these corridors have been completely rearranged." Perfectly mundane excuse for extended absence, he noted with satisfaction as his teammates accepted the explanation without question. Maintaining cover while gathering critical intelligence about exam security preparations. The remainder of the afternoon passed in routine preparation work, but Naruto's mind was occupied with processing the implications of everything he had observed. The Chunin exams were clearly intended to serve multiple purposes beyond simple promotion evaluation. They were an elaborate trap designed to lure specific targets into carefully controlled circumstances where they could be neutralized by overwhelming force. Orochimaru as primary target makes sense, he analyzed while organizing examination materials with mechanical efficiency. But Level 7 threat assessment suggests they're preparing for consequences that extend far beyond capturing a single rogue Sannin. That evening, after Team 11 had concluded their duties and dispersed to their respective homes, Naruto made his way to his secret training ground for what had become a nightly ritual of analysis and planning. The information gathered during the day required careful integration with existing intelligence to form a comprehensive understanding of the developing situation. Shadow Clone Jutsu, the familiar technique, filled the clearing with perfect duplicates, each one representing capabilities that continued to evolve far beyond what his official records suggested. As his clones began systematic review of the day's discoveries, Naruto reflected on how completely his circumstances had changed since the disbanding of the original Team 7. 6 months of careful observation and strategic patience, he thought as he watched his duplicates process intelligence with efficiency that would have impressed ANBU analysts. Time to discover whether the investment will yield appropriate returns. The following morning brought official confirmation of what Naruto had already deduced through his intelligence gathering. Team 11 was formally invited to participate in the Chunin selection exams, along with every other qualified Genin squad in the village. Ebisu delivered the news with appropriate gravity, emphasizing both the honor of participation and the responsibility it represented. "This is a significant opportunity for your development as shinobi," their instructor explained as Team 11 gathered for their morning briefing. "The exams will test not just your individual capabilities, but your ability to function as a cohesive unit under extreme pressure." Standard motivational speech, Naruto noted, while maintaining an expression of appropriate excitement. He's following established protocols for preparing students who may not be entirely ready for the challenges they're about to face. Konohamaru's reaction was immediate and enthusiastic. "This is amazing. We're actually going to compete against Genin from other villages. I can't wait to show everyone what we can do." Mogi and Udon shared their teammates' excitement, their faces bright with anticipation and determination. For them, the exams represented validation of their training and proof that they had earned recognition as legitimate shinobi. The political complexities and hidden dangers were beyond their current understanding. They saw only opportunity for advancement and glory. "Admirable innocence," Naruto observed as he participated in his team's celebratory discussions. "They have no idea they're being positioned as expendable assets in someone else's strategic game." "The first examination will be held in 3 days," Ebisu continued, consulting official documentation that had been distributed to all participating instructors. "You'll have that time to review fundamentals and ensure your equipment is properly maintained. I recommend focusing on coordination exercises and mental preparation rather than attempting to learn new techniques." Sound advice under normal circumstances, Naruto analyzed while nodding along with appropriate attention. Unfortunately, these won't be normal circumstances. As Team 11 began their final preparation period, Naruto found himself facing strategic decisions that would determine not just his performance in the exams, but potentially the trajectory of his entire future development. The information he had gathered suggested that the Chunin exams would become the stage for conflicts far beyond simple promotion evaluation. And those conflicts would provide unprecedented opportunities for observation, learning, and advancement. "Time to discover," he thought as his teammates began planning their approach to the coming challenges, "just how much a hidden genius can accomplish when the world's attention is focused elsewhere." The exams would test every aspect of the persona he had spent months perfecting. His ability to contribute meaningfully to his team's success while maintaining his facade of mediocrity. His skill at gathering intelligence from high-level sources without attracting unwanted attention. His capacity for navigating political complexities that extended far beyond simple village rivalries. Most importantly, they would determine whether his condition of imposed invisibility could be leveraged as a strategic advantage in situations where being overlooked might prove more valuable than being celebrated. "The foundation of shadows is complete," he reflected as evening approached, and Team 11 concluded their first day of exam preparation. Time for the genius to begin emerging from the darkness where it was forged. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, and new tests of everything he had learned about surviving in a world that refused to acknowledge his existence. The Chunin exams nobody wanted were about to begin. And nobody was prepared for what Naruto Uzumaki had become in the shadows of their neglect. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you want the next part of this video, like, subscribe and comment down below and turn on the bell notification. And also check out other videos that I have created and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.